Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Rabbi.
Kavod Harav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Okay. So we're doing hey, I think it says in Bit Yosef. ואפילו במקום שנהגנו לא לעשות מלאכה כל היום, אם התחילו מאתמול. So we read this in the tour last time. He says, right, that if he started the night before the labor that he was doing, he's allowed to continue the day after, which is Erev Pesach. So regarding that, says the Bit Yosef, Mishnah Sham, it's a Mishnah there, Nun He Amud Aleph, Rabbi Meir Omer, Kol Melacha Sheitchil Ba Kodem Yud Daled, Gomra B'Yud Daled. So it says, right, that Rabbi Meir says, any labor that he began on the night before, he can finish it on the 14th. Yeah. So as we said, you can finish on the 14th. But you shouldn't start on the 14th. In other words, on the day of the 14th. Even though you can finish it. So in the Gemara they asked regarding this, are we, when we learn this halakha, are we talking about for the need of the holiday? Or, but if it's not for the holiday, then you cannot, even finishing it is a problem. That's one way of looking at it. Or perhaps, another option is that we learned that it's not when it's not we learn halakha when it's not for the need of the holiday. But if it's for the need of the holiday, we can even start on the day of the 14th. Or it could be that whether you start the night before or the day of, it's always the same idea. What is the idea? That you can start, but not. I'm sorry, yeah. So, so yeah, you can't. You can finish, but not start. Right. Oh, sorry. So that's the question of the Gemara. Tashma, Rabbi Meir Omer. So he brings the answer from this Rabbi Meir, his teaching. That all labor, which is for the holiday, you can finish it on the 14th. But if it's not for the need of the holiday, asur, it's not allowed to do that. So then it says, right, that we do labor until the midday on the 14th. But it says, right, that's only places where the custom is to do so. But if the custom is not to do so, even in the morning, it's forbidden. So you learn from here the answer to your question. If it's for the need of the holiday, then we allow this. Otherwise, we don't allow it. The Katav Arosh says the Rosh regarding this. It seems like that which Rabbi Meir permitted the Gemara to finish in a place where the custom is not to do. Hainu ad chatzot, that's only until midday. Dafka, the end because you don't have the need of the holiday more than to do haircuts and laundry, right, for the holiday. So there they were allowed to start. But they only permitted that until midday. In here, Rabbeinu Yonah, they wrote, that all day it's allowed, since it teaches at the end of this Braita, ad chatzot, until midday, but when it's but it turns out that, right, if it's for the sake of the holiday, you can do all day. Then so he says, I don't agree with him. So Rabbeinu Yonah is quite lenient, more so than the others, and the Rosh says I don't agree with him. דלא מצא למיתלה בעניין אחר, כיוון דקתני עושה מלאכה בערב פסח, הוא צריך לשנות עד חצות, עד כן לשנו. So he says, right, that it doesn't read out from the source that he brought like his conclusion. So he doesn't agree with Rabbeinu Yonah, the Rosh. Okay. B'dat Rambam b'sof Hilchot Yom Tov. What about the Rambam? Who does he hold like? B'dat Rosh. He holds like the Rosh. Telo Sharei Rabbi Meir ligmor ela ad chatzot tavka. What does that mean? The Rabbi Meir only allows to finish until midday, right? But after midday, it's already not allowed. So even finishing after midday is a problem. Okay. Good. So then it says Katav Aran. Says the Ran, that which Rabbi Meir permitted to finish, that's even in a place where the custom is not to do, not to do in the morning. And that which we concluded that if they were accustomed, yes, if they were not accustomed, no. This is what it means to say. If the custom is not to do in the morning, right, as we said, you can't start any labor, even though it's for the needs of the holiday. But in a place where the custom is to do in the morning, it's allowed to do until the midday, even to begin. But the Rambam, he says, says that the that which we said that we can finish on the 14th, that's only in a place where the custom is to do. But only so he says, I don't agree with him. The Rabbad only argued with the Rambam. So the Ran doesn't seem to agree with the Rambam. But as you said, right, the Rambam is like the Rosh. And it says the Ran, the Ravad also argued with the Rambam regarding this. But the Rabbi Magid supports the words of the Rambam. So we already said, right, that regarding the Rosh, he agrees with the Ravad and the Ran Zal. Okay, but that's a little bit strange. Anyway, I'll read on. So he says, yeah, so this we should read in the tour first, but the truth is he brings the whole thing here. So what he's saying is like this, right? That when it comes to these professions, right? So what are these professions? Chayatim is a tailor, right? Saparim is a barber, and the kobasin are the launderers, right? They can do until midday. So meaning what? That even if the custom is not to do, when it comes to these three professions, they're allowed to do. I guess the reason is because they're very urgent, right? They're very crucial for the holiday. So therefore, the custom is never going to be to forbid these things. So it says Bet Yosef Mishnah Sham. It's a Mishnah there. ותמה דשאין הנח שלוש המוניות, או יותר משם מוניות, מפרש בגמרא, משום דאשכחן בהו כולה בחולו של מועד, ורבי יוסף מוסיף. So he says the reason why we're lenient regarding these three labors we just mentioned is because we also find that there's some leniency regarding Chol HaMoed, the intermediate days of the festivals. So since we have a leniency regarding that, we can also be lenient here. Rabbi Yosef Mosif Ratzanin. So Rabbi Yosef also adds this profession as well, right? Which is the Ratzanin. What is a Ratzanin? Tanners, right? What is a tanner? It's not a person who gets tans. We're talking about a person, right, who makes leather, right? Produces leather. Leather tanning. פסקו כמותו הרוקח, so רוקח פסקים זה כן, והכל בו, ואין כן דת על הפסקים, but the poskim don't agree with this. So it seems like we don't agree with this opinion. The truth is, right, that, it makes sense, right, that we shouldn't be lenient regarding this, because it's not really something so crucial for the holiday, and also it's not something we find that there's a leniency regarding Chol HaMoed as well. So that would be two reasons why we shouldn't be lenient regarding that. Okay, anyway. And he says, that's even in a place where the custom is not to do. Ken dat Rava, that's what the Rava says. The Ran also, the Gam ha dechayatim besfarim ukavasim, afilu b'makom shenagu shelo lasot, he, והרמב"ם כתב דגם זה במקום שנהגו לעשות היא. But the Rambam says, right, we're talking about a place where the custom is to do. Okay. Umash katav Rabbeinu ve'adoni avir Roshal. That was Rabbeinu said, right, that the Rosh katav kesvar rishona. He agrees with the first opinion. Afagab de Rosh lo piresh. Even though the Rosh, he says, the Bet Yosef did not really define regarding these three professions that we mentioned, he didn't really define whether this applies in a place where the custom is to do or not to do. But regarding the issue of starting the labor before the 14th, right, on the night before, he says that the Rosh, that's talking about even a place where the custom is not to do. So then it applies also, the same thing applies here as well, that he holds that these three professions that we mentioned, even a place where the custom is not to do, so he says that since any labor that you started before, you died before the 14th, and they were also taught together with that. So he says we're gonna apply the same rule for the last part of it as the first part of it. So basically he wants to say that. It seems like the Rosh is talking about a place where the custom is not to. So I'll explain to you what that means, right? Practically speaking. What that means is that we said that there are three professions, right, that we do allow in the morning to do. And we said, right, what are those three? We said, right, hair cutting, laundry, right, and what was the third one? Let me just go back and check that again. Yeah, and also tailors, right? So tailors and, as we said, right, hair cutting and laundry, those three things we do allow in the morning. So according to Rosh, we allow this even though the custom there is not to do in the morning, right, labor, even in a place where the custom is not to do. That's the way he wants to explain it. Okay, good. So we're done with that. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch. So he says like this, right? "Afilu b'makom shenagu la'asot." Even in a place where the custom is to do labor in the morning, לא יתחיל בתחילת מלאכה ב-14, אף על פי שהוא יכול לגומרה קודם מחצות. אלא שלושה אומנויות בלבד. Look what he says, right? Interesting. So he seems to paskin like the Rambam, who's a little bit more stringent here, right? Not like the Rosh. So what does that mean? He's telling you that even in a place where the custom is to do labor in the morning, look what he says, right? But, you know, you can only allow basically those three professions in the morning. אלא שלושה אומנויות בלבד, הם שמתחילים בהם במקום שנהגו לעשות ועושים עד חצות. So what does that mean? That we're allowed to start those things and to finish them before midday. באלוהן, right? So what are those three? חייטים, ספרים, וכובסים, right? We have the tailors, as we said, right? Seamsters, right? Yeah, the seamster is better than tailor, right? Whatever, the same thing, right? They're both, you know, what are we talking about here? We're talking about people who are making new clothing, right? So I guess tailor is better, whatever. Anyway, yes, it's all the same. Right? And we have the other two professions, which is the haircuts and laundry. So those three we do allow in the morning in a place where the custom is to do labor in the morning. This is the halacha, according to Shulchan Aruch. So, as we said, right, last week, we spoke about this already, that here we're talking about that you're doing for somebody else, even if it's for free. But when it comes to other types of professions, other labors, if he started before the 14th, right, the night before, whatever, then he can finish until midday. So this is the stringency of here of the Rambam. That's the way the Shulchan Aruch paskins. So here now the Ramah brings the other opinion, right, which is that of the Rosh. What does he say here? ויש מקילים לומר ששלושה מנויות הנזכרים מתחילים בעושה עד חצות. So he says those three that we mentioned, according to the Rosh, he can do until midday, even in a place where the custom is not to do. ואם התחיל מבעוד יום, so he says, right, if he started בשאר המנויות והיא לצורך המועד, עושים עד חצות והכי נהוג. So therefore, if he started, right, even that day, we're talking about before, right, before that day, the night before, whatever, right? So then, with other professions, if it's for the need of the holiday, we can do until midday. That's what the Ramah is. So this is the custom of the Ashkenazim, apparently, right? Whatever, of that time, like the Ramah says here, which is like the Rosh. Okay, interesting. But what I wanted to check is, before we go on, we did last time, which is that second. Yeah, so this is what we said, right, last week regarding this issue. We said in Seif Bet, that's only right if you're doing it for free. I'm sorry, for profit. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says, right? To make a profit, to make a wage, to make a salary. או בחינם והוא מלאכה גמורה לתפור בגדים גמש. אבל מתקן הוא כליו ליום טוב, וכן מי שכותב ספרים לעצמו, דרך לימודו מותר, right? So, says Shulchan Aruch, but if you're doing it just, like to repair something for yourself, to repair some clothing, to hem, to seam, right? Whatever, to do something like that, something which is ripped up, whatever, ripped, or got torn, things like this, right? Then you're allowed to do that even after midday. Also, for the issue with the books, right? To do after midday, you're allowed to. What does that mean? To write notes for yourself, to make a notebook for yourself, right? For your own purposes, not for selling, not for commerce, right? Not for business, whatever. Just to have your own notes, to have your own concepts written down in the Torah. This you're allowed to do. And then in the parentheses, he brings here also, if you're doing it for free, right? And if it's something which is like a real labor, you're not allowed to do. So, according to this, what is the practical application here? Just we should know, right? I want to make sure we got the practical idea, the practical application. So he says that. So again, right before midday, it depends on custom, right? So if the custom is to do, we do. If the custom is not to do, we don't do. Right? As we said last week, I think most places now the custom will probably be to do, unless you know for sure that the custom is not to do. That's what we saw in the Mishnah Brura, that he says many places have the custom to do, whatever. But nevertheless, right, comes the Shulchan Aruch now, what we just learned tonight, and comes and tells you, even in a place where the custom is to do, in the morning, before midday, that's only regarding those three labors that we mentioned, right? Seamster, laundry, right? Barber. Those three things we allow in the morning to do. So what does that mean? We allow to do it even for money, even for a wage, even for profit. In the morning, we allow it. But what about after? What about after midday? So after midday, we will only allow things which are not professional things. So what does that mean? First of all, you're not making any money, right? There's no salary there. And also, it's not something which is like a real labor. So what does that mean, real labor? As we said, right? It's something which people do as work. It's a job, basically, right? So therefore, right, to do, let's say, a haircut for somebody else would be forbidden, or to do somebody else's laundry, right, would be forbidden, because this would be something, it's like a job. But to do your own after midday, right, that would be probably allowed, because you're not doing it for a wage. And since you're doing it for yourself, it's not really called something professional. As we said, right, you're making like new clothing. That's already professional. So that's already something else. We're not talking about that. Otherwise, right, let's say you take your haircut machine, right, and you gave yourself a haircut. That's not really professional, right? That's very amateurish, so that's not really something which you're doing it for yourself. But to do it for somebody else, that's already a problem. Because it's like you're going to a barber, basically. Okay, so pretty much that's the way it seems. But according to the Rama, who's a little bit more lenient, right? So he allows to do in the morning all kinds of labors. So what does that mean? In a place where I'm sorry, he allows to do in the morning, right? All kinds of labors. What Let me just read that again one more time, the Rama. Make sure we remember everything here. So again, right, this says the Rama, according to the Rosh, so it says that so right, it says even a place where the custom is not to do in the morning, says the Rama, it's not to do. Nevertheless, those three professions we do allow. We started before, right before the day. He started the night before, or even before that. So then, if it's for the sake of the holiday, right, we allow it to do until midday. That's the custom, he says. Okay. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll go on. So if that's the case, right, we really should be careful that when it comes to right Erev Pesach, we really shouldn't be doing all kinds of labors, even in the morning. Right, it's not really something which is advisable to do even in the morning, except those three, as we said. Right, those three are allowed, but otherwise, not to do so. According to Shulchan Aruch, according to Rama, right, in the morning you can do just about anything. Okay, good. So let's go on. So he says the Torah like this: Moshivin shovachin letarnegolin perush leoshiva al betzim legadel efrochin biyom daled kol hayom v'kol sheken im barcha me'al habetzim shachol yachazira. So here he's talking about something we don't not so practical today, but anyway, that he says that the point is that we want to put the chickens to sit on their eggs, in order to hatch them, to grow the chicks on the 14th, all day, he says, right? All the more so, he says, if he ran off the chicken, after he already sat, that you're allowed to return him to his place. Why is that? Because we don't want these eggs, right, to be lost. We should lose these chicks. That's what the Torah is saying. Okay, let's see Bet Yosef. So says Bet Yosef regarding this, Mishnah Sham, it's from the Mishnah over there, Nun Hey Amud Bet, Moshivin Shovachin the Tarnegolin, Biul Dalet v'Tarnegolet Shebarcha Machazin Ota. Right, as we said, we can put the chickens on top of the eggs, so they should hatch. Right, and all the more so, we return them if they ran off. Look what he says, right? And if the chicken died, we can bring some other chicken, right, to sit there, right? Oh, interesting. So he says, right, that the Gemara asks a question, a good question. Right? If you're going to tell me that you're allowed to place them on those chickens, on those eggs, all the more so, right, it should be allowed to return them. So then why do you need to teach both? So So Abaya says, right, that is talking about Chol HaMoed, right, intermediate days of festivals. Peresh Rashi, keshenotnim betzim tachat hatarnegolet. So Rashi explains, right, that when we put those eggs under the chicken, litchamem, right, to warm them up, legadel efrochim, to hatch the chickens. Kre moshivin shovachim. That's the way. This is the term that they use for that. ולפי גרסה זו, right, פירוש זה, דברי רבנו הם פשוטים. So according to this, right, this text, he says, the words of the two are clear, right? In other words, everything is, right on the money. Okay, let's see Shulchan Aruch. So says Shulchan Aruch, right? מושבים שבחים לתרנגולים ב14, דהיינו לתקן מקום שיעמדו התרנגולים בתרנגולת. So says Shulchan Aruch, right, again, same thing, that we make those chickens, right, sit on their eggs. So he says, right, what does that mean, practically speaking? In other words, here's the thing, right? You may ask a good question here, which is, what labor does this involve? You know what I mean? Placing a chicken on the eggs. So why do you need to tell me that this is allowed to do? What labor is involved in this? So says Shulchan Aruch, the labor is that you're, making that place where, he sits, the chicken. So it's sort of like, you're building like a little, a seat for him there, for him to sit. And that's the labor involved. Because, if you were just to pick up the chicken, and let him sit there, whatever, to place him there, what labor is that, right? Picking up a chicken is not labor. So, okay, well, all right. Anyway, let's go on. This is not so practical, right? Most of us don't have chickens nowadays, so I'm not going to get too involved with this. I think we pretty much covered it. So now we're going to the last one, I think. This is the last one. Oh, no, it's not.
Muksa are on Shabbat. Are they muksa on holidays too?
I'm sorry?
Animals are considered muksa on Shabbat. Are they considered muksa on holidays too?
What, the chickens? Well, yeah, I know, I understand. I get the drift, what you're trying to say there. Right? The issue of muksa, right? The prohibition of muksa. So I'm going to tell you two things about that, right? Number one, first of all, muksa is only rabbinical, you know what I mean? So it's not really a labor. You know that, right? It's a rabbinical prohibition. So rabbis didn't, they didn't forbid rabbinical things. They only forbade real labor, as we said, right? So that's one. I hope that answers your question. But there's also one more thing I have to tell you, which is that, what do you call it? Regarding the issue of right. So on Yom Tov, the rule is you're allowed to slaughter animals. If you want to eat, right, you're allowed to do shchita. So therefore, if your intention was to do slaughter with that chicken, it's not muksa the chicken. You know what I mean? But if your intention was not to do, yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The intention is not to slaughter. The intention is to make it sit on the eggs. Yeah.
Right. So right, exactly. So then it would be muktzah. But as we said, right, that doesn't really, affect our discussion because it's not really a labor. So it is what it is. Okay. So yeah. So now we're going to the next one. Which is Zayin. So he brings here Bet Yosef. But the Rambam says, Tarnegolet she'ashva al betzim shlosha yamim or yoter. So he says the Rambam like this: if the chicken, right, sat on the eggs for 3 days or more, umeta, right, and then it died, Moshivin acher tachtav. So we bring another chicken to sit on the eggs. Biyom Tov, I'm the 14th, I'm sorry. Kadesh lo yifsadu habetzim. Why is that? As we said, right, that they shouldn't be, right, there shouldn't be a loss there. You shouldn't lose your chicks. V'moed en moshivin, right, but he says on a holiday though, right, we don't do that. So what does that mean, holiday? Right, apparently he's talking about on Chol HaMoed, right, the intermediate days of the festivals. That we don't do that. So it seems like we're a little bit more stringent, right, on those days. But anyway, but he says, but he says if he ran off the chicken, right, from the eggs, we can return it, right, even in Kama, even on the holiday, it seems, right. So I'm going to explain those things in laws of Chol HaMoed, right. This is not the place for that. Okay, but anyway, right, we'll see the Shulchan Aruch here. We're almost finished with the chapter, I think. So that's good. Yeah, so it says Shulchan Aruch like this. Tanagolet she'yashva betzim shlosha yamim o yoter. Right, so it says, right, if the chicken sat on the eggs 3 days or more, right, as the Rambam said, umeta, and then it died. So we can put another one and let it sit there, right? In order, right, that we shouldn't lose those eggs. Okay. So as we said, right, that but on Chol HaMoed we don't do that. Okay. But we can return them, right, if they already sat. They ran off. Okay. The question is, does this Shulchan Aruch that we just said now, does that contradict the one we said before? So definitely doesn't contradict the Shulchan Aruch itself, because the Shulchan Aruch is not talking there in Gimel. I'm sorry, in Zayin. It's not talking about returning them in a case like that. Let me see the Mishnah Berurah here. Let's see how he explains this. It's a little bit baffling the way it's worded here. Right, so the Mishnah Berurah explains it nicely. He says that according to this opinion, right, the Rambam, it's only when they sat for 3 days, the chickens. Why is that? Because they're not fitting to eat anymore, those chickens, at that point. So therefore, it's going to be a total loss if you lose those eggs. And therefore, right, if that chicken died, you're allowed to return, right? You're allowed to put another chicken there, right? To put another chicken. But beforehand, he says, right, the Mishnah Berurah, beforehand, before 3 days, it's still edible, somewhat. So he says, therefore, we can't be lenient, according to Rambam. And that's the halacha. So therefore, right, regarding that issue, that the chicken died, it's a little bit different than what we saw in the Beit Yosef in the last halacha, which was even more lenient, right? That even if it wasn't for 3 days. But according to Rambam, it's only 3 days. That's the difference, right? So there is sort of a contradiction here, right? Not in the Shulchan Aruch itself, but between this Shulchan Aruch and the Bet Yosef that we saw before, which had another opinion there. But anyway, right, the halacha is, bottom line, that we're only lenient when it comes to 3 days. Otherwise, we're not lenient. So what does that mean? We're only lenient to put another chicken there, right? To put a substitute chicken. Only after 3 days, but before, if it wasn't 3 days, so we're not lenient. And again, right, what's the reason why? It says the Mishnah Berurah, because it's not a total loss. You can still eat those eggs if she didn't sit for 3 days, the chicken. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. All right, good. So I guess we'll go on. We have one more here, so I guess we can just finish it off. Belina there? Indeed. We can stop there. So this is all for animal owners. Talachot. We have such animals probably. I certainly don't have. But anyway, we'll learn it. So right, so it says here the tour. Right. So another thing you're allowed to do on the 14th, right, is to remove the manure that the animal has excreted, which is like under their feet, basically, right? We're allowed to remove it. So says Bet Yosef regarding that, Mishnah beperek bakom shenahagu, right? It's a Mishnah over there that says this. Okay, so let's read in the two, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff over here we can read, and we'll see what it says here. So it says the tour, Gorfina zevel mitachat reglei, as we said, right? You're allowed to rake out all that manure, right, which is under the legs of the animal. But it says, but whatever you have in the courtyard, right, in the yard, you should not take it out. Just push it to the side. But it says if there's a lot in the yard, you're allowed to take it out, the yashba, to the garbage, right? Also, it says you're allowed to, like pick up stuff, from the store, all kinds of utensils that you had, you had them prepare or to clean, whatever it is, you're allowed to go and pick it up, no problem, on the 14th. Even though it says not for the need of a holiday, really. So he says, here also the Rambam says that only applies until midday. But the Torah says, right, doesn't agree with that. So meaning what? That according to him, it's allowed also after midday. Okay, interesting. So that's the Torah. Bet Yosef, we saw. And so...
Kabbalah Tarav, I'm sorry, who said allowed after midday or before midday? Rambam?
The Rambam, right. The Rambam says only before midday. But the truth is, that's like the next halacha. So we'll get to that in a second. Let me just first do het in the Shulchan Aruch. And we'll get to that in a second. So says the Shulchan Aruch, Gorfin zevel mitachat reglei behema. You're allowed to remove, right, the excrement under the legs, right, the manure under the feet of the animal. So it's like, you shovel it out, right? Whatever. So the question is, by the way, why did the rabbis allow you to do this, and what's the significance of this? So let's see the Mishnah Berurah, maybe explains. משליכים אותו לחוץ דווקא כשעומדת הבהמה, אין מותר כמו שדה בשדה. Yeah. So he doesn't really say what the reason is, but it's implied, like from the language that, it's logical that probably it's because, it bothers the animal that it's there. It probably causes him suffering, So, there's a rule like this that we're not allowed to make animals suffer. So I guess it makes them suffer, the fact that, he's standing on top of his excrement there, his manure there. I guess that's the reason why. But, we're not really farmers. We're not really livestock people. So I'll just leave that aside for now. And we'll go on to the next piece here. So as we said, right, that Bet Yosef first. So right, so it says in Bet Yosef, Sham Tanu Rabbanan, right? We learned that in the Breita there, in the Gemara. Hazever shebechatzer mesarkin oto letzdadim. So if you have, right, the excrement, which is in the yard, right, your livestock people, so you're allowed to, like, just push it to the side, right? לצדדים שברפת ובחצר, ובחצר מוציאים אותו להשפעה. But it says, if it's in the barn, right, where the animal is, right, whatever that thing is called, so there you're allowed to take it out to the garbage. מוציאים אותו להשפעה, גופה קשיא, אמת זבל שבחצר. So, right, there's a sort of a contradiction here, because in the beginning it tells you you're allowed to just push it to the side, and then tells you can take it out to the garbage. So Rabbi explains, right, there's no contradiction. That if the yard is full of that stuff, so then it becomes like a barn, right, which is full of it. You can take it out to the garbage. So I don't know why the Rambam left out this halacha. Right? I guess he wasn't a big livestock guy. I'm joking, but this is probably not the reason why he left it out. I'm joking. Okay. That doesn't make sense. So don't take it seriously. Because the Rambam talks about all the halachot, whether he's a livestock guy or is a farmer, that's not the issue. Okay. So anyway, right? He does everything. He does everything for you. So we'll just do Shulchan Aruch and we're done. So the Rambam says like this, right? I'm sorry, the Shulchan Aruch says, "Hazever shebechatzer lo yotzienu," right? As we said, right? If you have the excrement of the animal, right? Whatever, dung, right? That dung, that's the good word. I should have thought of that before. Don't take it out, right, from the yard. All you have to do is just take it to the side, right? So what does that mean? It's not so crucial, to remove it. It's a lot of work, that's the thing. You got to shovel it out. It's a lot of, it's a job. You're gonna break a sweat, with that stuff, right? So therefore, right, tells you, the rule is whatever you don't need to do so much, you really shouldn't do it. So that's why it tells you not to do it. Just push it to the side. Because taking it out to the garbage, is already a big job. But it says if there's already a lot there, and in the yard, right? It's already getting to be like a messy situation. So then you can take it out to the garbage, right? So it all depends on the situation. You know what I mean? If it's a big mess there, you're allowed to take it out. So the point is like this, that we want the animals to have, a normal environment, to live in. We don't want them to live in an environment which, I guess, makes it, makes it impossible for them, makes it offensive, whatever, right? I don't know if animals get offended, but whatever it is, right? They don't like the smell of it, I guess, whatever it is, right? Or, the feel of it, whatever. So, nobody likes dung. So that's what can you do, right? Okay, so we're done with the chapter. Bezrat Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. You should have only clean environments, right? No dung in your area, right? So everything should be nice and clean. And Bezrat Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. Chazak Baruch, Laila Tov.
Kavod Harav. Thank you so much.
God bless.
Thank you, Rabbi.
God bless.